The rain had been falling since late afternoon, steady and soft at first, like a shy visitor tapping at the windows. By evening, it had deepened into a rhythmic drumming, steady as a heartbeat, filling the little stone cottage with a sound both soothing and isolating. Outside, the world blurred, trees melted into shadowy shapes, their branches sagging under the weight of water. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of damp wood and the faint trace of lavender from the fire-warmed blankets. Isabel sat curled in her chair, a book resting half open on her lap, though she hadn't turned a page in over 20 minutes. She wasn't reading anymore. She was listening. Listening to the rain, yes, but also to the way it seemed to carry whispers. She had always loved storms. They gave her an excuse to stay indoors without guilt, to light the hearth and brew tea, to lose herself in worlds made of words. But tonight felt different. There was a heaviness to the weather, as if the clouds were not simply spilling rain but pressing the sky downward. A low fog clung to the hills, and the forest beyond the cottage looked impossibly dark, its outlines shifting like something alive. Isabel caught herself glancing toward the window more often than usual, each time expecting to see. What, exactly? She couldn't say. The feeling was neither fear nor excitement, but a strange mixture of both. Like being on the brink of a story you haven't yet been told. The kettle whistled sharply, startling her into motion. She poured the steaming water over dried chamomile blossoms, watching the pale gold tendrils curl upward, scenting the air with something calming and floral. But even as she breathed it in, she couldn't shake the pull of the outside world. She moved to the window and pressed her fingertips to the cold glass. Beyond the rain-slicked panes, the path leading into the forest glistened faintly under the scattered light of the oil lamp. She imagined footsteps there, splashing softly in the puddles, an image so vivid that her chest tightened, though no one was in sight. When the knock came, it was almost too gentle to hear over the storm. A single tap, then another, then silence. Isabel froze, her breath caught somewhere between her throat and her lungs. In her years living here, visitors were rare, and unannounced visitors at night were unheard of. She set her cup down and approached the door slowly, feeling the old wooden boards shift slightly beneath her weight. Another knock, firmer this time. She hesitated, then drew back the latch and opened the door just a crack. A man stood there, though man seemed too simple a word for what she saw. His shoulders filled the doorway, his cloak dripping rain onto the threshold, and his eyes, deep, amber, and unblinking, held hers with a strange intensity. His features were striking, almost beautiful, but edged with something wild, untamed. Behind him, the forest swayed, and for an instant, Isabel thought she saw something else moving in the shadows beyond, something large and hulking, a shape that vanished the moment she blinked. Michael's breath fogged slightly as he stepped farther inside, the temperature dropping with every footstep. His phone, still glowing in his hand, displayed the message, "You're early," as though it had been carved into his mind. He turned toward the door, half ready to retreat, but the storm outside had thickened. Sheets of rain lashed the porch now, and the thought of navigating that twisting road in the dark and wet sent a shiver down his spine. He shoved the phone into his pocket, telling himself his friend was just playing a prank. But something about the message felt off. Too precise. Too knowing the grandfather clock he had passed earlier now ticked faintly. Michael turned to look, startled. The pendulum had been frozen moments ago. The clock face, however, was wrong. Its hands pointed to 12:07, even though his phone read 8:41. As he stared, a faint creak sounded from upstairs. He glanced up the staircase, its railing thick with dust, and thought he saw a flicker of movement, a dark blur darting out of sight just beyond the landing. His pulse quickened. Maybe his friend had arrived early and was hiding to scare him. That had to be it. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step complaining under his weight. The hallway above was narrower, the wallpaper more decayed, and several doors lined the passage. One was cracked open, light leaking through from what seemed to be a lantern or candle. Michael hesitated before pushing the door wider. Inside was a small sitting room, a dusty armchair, a shelf of water-stained books, and a single framed photograph on the mantel. The picture was of 4 people, 3 men and a woman, standing in front of the very same house. Their faces were blurred, as if the photo had been exposed too long. As he leaned closer, thunder rolled outside, rattling the window pane. That was when he heard it again. A footstep in the hall, deliberate and slow. Michael straightened, his throat dry. "All right, enough," he called, his voice cracking slightly. "You got me. You can come out now." Silence stretched, so complete it pressed against his ears. Then, another step, closer this time. But when he opened the door and peered into the hall, it was empty. A draft whispered through the corridor, carrying the faint smell of damp earth, like a freshly dug grave. His phone buzzed again, and he fumbled to pull it out. Another unknown number text glowed on the screen. "Don't follow the sound." Lightning flashed, plunging the hallway into sharp relief for a heartbeat. And in that moment, Michael thought he saw a shape at the end of the corridor, tall and hunched, watching him. The light faded, leaving only darkness. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He backed slowly toward the staircase, every instinct screaming to leave, but a distant sound, faint but unmistakable, rose above the storm. A voice, calling his name from somewhere deeper in the house. Michael gripped the staircase railing to steady himself, but his legs felt unsteady, as though the house itself was tilting beneath him. The voice calling his name had been soft, feminine, and unfamiliar, nothing like his college friend's baritone. He considered leaving then and there, even if it meant risking the storm outside, but another flash of lightning illuminated a door at the far end of the hall, one he hadn't noticed before. Its knob glimmered faintly, almost beckoning. Against his better judgment, he stepped forward, each creaking floorboard sounding too loud in the hush between thunderclaps. The door opened with surprising ease, revealing a small bedroom that smelled faintly of damp paper and lavender long faded. Dust coated every surface except the rocking chair by the window, its wood polished smooth as if recently touched. The candle on the nightstand flickered as he entered, though he hadn't lit it. He whispered hello to the empty air. The house didn't answer, at least not directly. Instead, a faint whisper tickled the edge of hearing, so soft it was almost mistaken for the sighing of the wind. The words were indistinct, like someone speaking underwater, but the tone was unmistakably urgent. Michael stepped closer to the wardrobe, the whispers growing louder. For a moment, he thought he could make out a phrase. "Not alone, not alone." The wardrobe door creaked wider on its own, revealing nothing inside but a few tattered coats. Yet the smell of damp earth rolled out, stronger now, mingled with something older, something like decay. He staggered back, bumping the rocking chair, which rocked once, twice, then stopped. His heart hammered in his chest, and he could feel the press of unseen eyes watching him. His phone vibrated again. He snatched it out of his pocket, almost dropping it. The screen displayed another text, "Stay where you are." He stared at the message, bile rising in his throat. Whoever was sending these texts knew where he was, down to the room. His hand trembled as he typed back, "Who is this? Where are you?" But no response came. The whispering grew sharper now, angrier, like many voices overlapping. He felt the temperature plummet, his breath fogging as though the room were an open freezer. As suddenly as it had begun, the whispering stopped. Silence crashed over the room, thick and oppressive. Michael backed toward the door, his shoes crunching on some unseen grit on the floor. Just as he reached the threshold, lightning flared outside the window, and in that split second of brightness, he saw a reflection in the cracked dresser mirror, a woman standing directly behind him. She was pale, her eyes wide and hollow, her mouth open in a soundless scream. But when he spun around, the room was empty. Only the rocking chair moved, swaying gently back and forth, as if someone had just risen from it. Michael's pulse hadn't slowed since the reflection in the mirror. Every instinct screamed for him to leave, yet some inexplicable pull kept him inside the house. As he made his way back down the hallway, the storm outside howled louder, battering the windows with rain that sounded like desperate fingers tapping at the glass. He descended the stairs carefully, each step moaning beneath his weight. The ground floor felt even darker now, as if the shadows had thickened while he was upstairs. He turned a corner near the coat rack and froze. Behind the rack, barely visible, was another door he hadn't seen before. This door was older than the others, its paint cracked and discolored, though it splintered in places. Something about it radiated cold, like an invisible draft seeping through its seams. Michael reached out to touch the knob but recoiled. The metal was icy enough to burn his skin. He crouched slightly, trying to peer through the small gap between the door and the frame. Only darkness stared back. Then came the faintest sound, a whisper, low and dragging, like someone breathing words through clenched teeth. He couldn't make out the words, but the tone chilled him to the bone. The whisper stopped abruptly, replaced by a faint thud from below. Michael's phone buzzed once more, lighting up his trembling hand. "Don't open it," the new message read. His throat tightened. He typed back quickly, "Who are you? What's in there?" No reply came. He glanced toward the front door, considering his escape again, but lightning flashed through the windows and illuminated the living room. For a split second, he saw muddy footprints leading from the front door toward the basement. They hadn't been there before, and they weren't his. A fresh gust of wind rattled the house, and one of the upstairs doors slammed shut, echoing through the hallways. The sudden noise jolted Michael forward, straight toward the basement door. Against all reason, he reached for the knob again, holding it until the chill numbed his fingers. The scratching marks on the wood caught his eye, long grooves carved deeply, some of them still splintered as if freshly made. He imagined something trapped below, something that had tried desperately to claw its way out. That he stepped back, heart hammering, and the light bulb above him flickered violently before plunging the hallway into momentary darkness. When it sputtered back to life, the muddy footprints were gone. The floor was clean, the storm quieter outside, as if nothing had happened. Only the basement door remained, still and silent, yet now it seemed to hum faintly beneath his fingertips. Michael whispered to himself, "I'm not imagining this," but the sound of his own voice felt foreign in the oppressive silence. And then, from the other side of the door, 3 slow, deliberate knocks echoed upward, each one heavier than the last. Michael's chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. The 3 knocks still reverberated in his mind, their echoes fading like distant thunder. He hesitated at the basement door, gripping the knob as if holding onto a lifeline. The rational part of his mind screamed to leave, to abandon this house and brave the storm outside. But something deeper, a morbid curiosity mixed with an inexplicable sense of obligation, urged him to go on. The rain outside pounded harder, a steady rhythm that felt almost like a heartbeat urging him forward. He twisted the knob slowly. It turned easily now, no longer icy, as though the house itself had decided to allow him entry. The hinges groaned softly as he pushed the door open, revealing the narrow staircase spiraling downward. The smell hit him immediately, damp earth and rotting wood mingled with something metallic, sharp, and coppery. The light bulb above flickered once and then steadied, casting long, trembling shadows down the stairwell. With every step, Michael felt the weight of the house pressing in around him, its silence too absolute, too intentional. The basement was colder than the upper floors, the air clammy against his skin. Rainwater seeped through cracks in the stone walls, pooling in dark corners. At the center of the floor, several wooden boards looked newer than the rest, different grain, different color, as though someone had replaced them recently. Michael crouched down, running a hand over the seams, and felt a faint vibration beneath his fingertips. It wasn't mechanical, more like a heartbeat, slow and deep, pulsing beneath the wood. A chill swept through him, and he instinctively stepped back to eye in the far corner. The dust-covered trunk loomed like a silent sentinel. Its brass latch was tarnished, and faint scratch marks marred its surface. Michael approached carefully, each footstep echoing too loudly in the confined space. As he reached out to lift the latch, a sudden gust of wind slammed the basement door shut upstairs. The sound was deafening, and for an instant he thought he heard a woman's voice whisper his name again. Closer now, as though she stood directly behind him. He spun around. Nothing but shadows. Gathering his courage, he flipped the trunk open. Inside lay a collection of old photographs, each yellowed with age. Every picture featured the same Victorian house, captured in different decades, the shutters pristine in some, hanging loose in others. But the disturbing detail was the figures. In every photograph, a tall, hunched silhouette lurked in the background, watching from a window or the tree-line. Even more unsettling, the most recent photo showed Michael himself standing on the porch in the present storm, despite the fact that he had never taken such a picture. As he stared at it, a single raindrop landed on the photo's surface, though the basement was perfectly dry. Somewhere beneath the floorboards, something knocked, once, slow and deliberate. Michael's shaking hands hovered over the photographs, the image of himself on the porch staring back with a cruel sort of inevitability. His heartbeat pounded in his ears, so loud it nearly drowned out the storm above. But the knocking beneath the boards came again. This time, two quick raps followed by a long scrape, like nails dragging across stone. Something beneath him was alive. He glanced toward the basement door, considering escape yet again, but the thought of leaving without answers gnawed at him. Whoever, or whatever, was toying with him seemed determined that he spotted an old crowbar leaning against the wall, its metal slick with condensation. Kneeling, he wedged it beneath the edge of one of the newer boards. The wood protested as he pried it loose, the screech of nails against timber sending a jolt of panic through him. One by one, he removed several boards, the gaps revealing dark, moist earth. Then, abruptly, the crowbar slipped, his hand smashing against the edge of the opening, and a section of floor collapsed inward, exposing a narrow tunnel descending steeply into darkness. A rush of cold air burst from the tunnel, carrying the unmistakable scent of decay and something older, something that smelled like wet stone and forgotten places. Michael's phone vibrated violently in his pocket. He fumbled it out, and another text glowed against the dimness. "Don't go down there." His throat tightened. This warning was more urgent than the others, and for the first time, he wondered if the mysterious texter was trying to save him instead of scare him. But when he glanced back at the photographs, the silhouette in the most recent one seemed closer now. Its hunched shape pressed against the basement window. A faint sound rose from the tunnel. Whispers again, but this time clearer. They spoke his name in a dozen overlapping voices, some high and childlike, others deep and guttural. The words slithered around his ears like living things. "Michael, come back. Michael." He backed away from the opening, but the ground beneath him vibrated faintly, as though something massive shifted far below. The light bulb above him flickered twice, then burned brighter, casting harsh shadows that danced across the stone walls. For an instant, he thought he saw a hand, long-fingered and pale, reach upward from the tunnel's mouth before vanishing. Michael stumbled back against the trunk, his mind screaming for him to flee. Yet the whispers softened again, turning almost tender, coaxing him like a lullaby. "It's safe. Come see. You've been here before." The basement door at the top of the stairs creaked open slightly on its own, letting in a sliver of storm-lit hallway. It would be so easy to run. But as he looked back at the hole yawning in the floor, something impossible occurred. The tunnel seemed to shift, its darkness rippling like water, and for a heartbeat, he could swear he saw himself standing inside it, watching from below. Michael's fingers trembled as he gripped the crowbar like a makeshift weapon. The image of his own reflection in the tunnel's darkness haunted him, the idea that something down there was wearing his face. He lingered by the opening for a moment, heart hammering, but the storm outside had grown fiercer, thunder rattling the foundation. Staying in the basement felt no safer than the descent. He swung his legs over the edge and began to lower himself in, his shoes sinking slightly into damp soil. The air inside the tunnel was thick and heavy, colder than the basement and oddly still, as though even the wind feared to follow him. The first few steps were hesitant, each squelching sound echoing down the passageway. Michael turned on his phone's flashlight, its weak beams slicing through the darkness just enough to reveal jagged roots and crumbling walls. The deeper he went, the quieter the world above became, until the storm was nothing but a distant, muffled roar. At times, the tunnel narrowed so much he had to hunch, the earth brushing against his shoulders. The smell of decay grew stronger, layered with something sour and chemical, like old blood and damp stone. After what felt like 10 minutes, he reached a bend in the tunnel. The whispers returned, faint at first, but then swelling until they filled the air around him. The voices overlapped, murmuring his name, fragments of phrases. "Been waiting so long. It's you." He tightened his grip on the crowbar and edged around the corner. The light revealed a small chamber carved out of the earth, the floor uneven and glistening with water. At its center stood a crude wooden chair, its legs sunk slightly into the mud. On the chair sat another photograph, this one pristine, as though untouched by time. showing Michael as a child standing in front of the same Victorian house. His stomach lurched. He had never been here before. He was certain of it, yet the photograph suggested otherwise. He reached for it with a shaking hand, but as his fingers brushed the edge, a sudden rush of cold air swept through the chamber, extinguishing his flashlight. Darkness swallowed him whole. The whispers turned into low, rumbling laughter, soft at first, then growing until it reverberated through the walls like distant thunder. Michael fumbled with his phone, desperate to relight the screen, but it refused to turn on. In the pitch black, he could hear water dripping and something else. The slow crunch of footsteps approaching from the tunnel behind him. He turned toward the sound, his breath ragged, crowbar raised in a trembling hand. The laughter ceased, replaced by a silence so complete it was deafening. Then, from somewhere in the darkness, his own voice spoke, clear and steady, but from behind him, "You shouldn't have come back." The words froze him in place. He swung blindly, the crowbar slicing through empty air. Somewhere deeper in the tunnel, something shuffled, retreating, or perhaps circling. The ground beneath his feet quivered ever so slightly, and a distant knocking, impossibly far below, echoed upward through the earth. The tunnel air grew colder as Michael stood frozen, his own voice still echoing in his ears. The silence after those impossible words was suffocating. He crouched, fumbling with his phone until, mercifully, the screen flickered back to life. Its light felt pitiful against the yawning blackness, but it was enough to reveal a faint path leading farther down. His instincts screamed to turn back, but his curiosity, fueled by fear and disbelief, dragged him forward. As he walked, he noticed faint handprints smeared along the tunnel walls, some small like a child's, others long and spindly, stretched impossibly wide. The tunnel opened into a wider chamber, larger than any basement could conceal. Strange symbols had been carved deep into the earth walls, their edges smoothed as if by centuries of touch. Mud-caked lanterns and cracked glass bottles lay scattered on the floor. In the center of the chamber, a broken wooden table lay on its side, partially buried in muck. On top of it, half submerged in mud, Michael found more photographs. Images of the Victorian house taken from unsettling angles, from the treetops, from beneath the porch, even from inside darkened rooms. One photograph, cleaner than the rest, showed him standing at this very table, crowbar in hand. The realization hit him like a physical blow. These pictures weren't predictions, they were recordings. Someone, or something, had been documenting him in real time. He dropped the photo, his stomach twisting, and turned toward the chamber walls. That was when he noticed the doorways. 5 crude openings dug into the earthen walls, leading off in different directions. They weren't doors in any traditional sense, just gaps in the soil, but their edges seemed to breathe subtly, shrinking and expanding as though inhaling. A faint shuffling noise came from one of the passages, followed by a whisper that mimicked his own voice again. "This way." Michael stepped back, raising the crowbar defensively. The shadows around the doorways stretched unnaturally, reaching toward him like fingers of smoke. For a brief moment, one shadow took on a human form, a tall, hunched silhouette with a face blurred like a smudged painting. It didn't move like a person. Its limbs jerked in stiff, unnatural motions, bending at angles that made his stomach churn. He felt a pulse beneath his feet, like the earth itself had a heartbeat, and a wave of vertigo washed over him. The phone buzzed again, nearly slipping from his sweaty grip. A new message glowed on the screen. "Choose carefully." The words pulsed on the display like a warning flare. Michael glanced between the shifting doorways, the symbols on the walls, and the scattered photographs that documented every step he'd taken tonight. The storm outside was a distant memory now. The only sounds were the faint, deliberate breaths of the tunnels themselves. Behind him, from the passage he had just come through, came a low, rumbling sound, like stone grinding against stone, growing louder, closer, and undeniably deliberate. Michael spun around at the grinding sound behind him, but the tunnel he'd entered through was gone. Smooth earth now sealed the way, erasing his escape. Panic surged through him, raw, animal panic, but the whispering voices returned, a chorus of half-familiar tones that twisted into words. "You've always been here." The 5 passageways yawned around him like hungry mouths, their openings flexing subtly as though alive. He chose the one with the faint orange glow, reasoning that light meant life, or at least a way out. The air grew warmer as he advanced, and the walls seemed to close in tighter, brushing his shoulders. The glowing symbols pulsed faintly, almost like veins under skin, leading him deeper into the earth. His breath came in short bursts, fogging in the chill that still clung to the tunnel despite the growing warmth. The orange glow ahead flickered irregularly, sometimes vanishing entirely before reappearing. Every time it disappeared, the darkness pressed closer, suffocating him with the weight of the underground. Rounding a bend, he stepped into another chamber, smaller this time, but suffused with a faint, unnatural light. At the center was a lantern, but it burned without flame, its glass swirling with liquid shadows. Around it, the dirt floor was littered with more photographs, but these were different. They showed scenes from his childhood home, his high school graduation, his first apartment. All of them were moments he had never shared with anyone. His stomach dropped as he picked one up. A photo of him asleep in his college dorm. Taken from inches away, a shuffling sound came from behind him. He turned, raising the crowbar, but nothing moved in the tunnel. The light from the lantern dimmed suddenly, casting deep, jagged shadows that danced across the walls. Then, from the darkness, a tall, hunched shape emerged. Its blurred face shifted grotesquely, forming his own features for a heartbeat before twisting into a hollow, eyeless mask. "You should have listened," it whispered in his voice. The words vibrated in the air, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Michael backed toward the lantern, but the chamber itself seemed to warp, its walls bending inward like a closing fist. The figure stepped closer, its long fingers dragging through the dirt, leaving grooves that bled faint orange light. The photographs on the ground rustled as if caught in a breeze, even though the air was perfectly still. Then his phone buzzed again, and he glanced at the screen with dread. The new message read, "The last door." Before he could react, the ground beneath his feet trembled violently, and the wall to his left crumbled, revealing a sixth tunnel that hadn't been there before, its darkness deeper and somehow hungry. Michael stared at the new tunnel, the sixth one, its gaping darkness somehow darker than all the others. The buzzing of his phone had stopped, and the silence that followed was more oppressive than any whisper. The hunched figure was gone, as if swallowed by the walls themselves, leaving only the faint orange glow from the strange lantern behind him. His heart pounded, every instinct screaming to turn back. But there was no back anymore. He stepped into the tunnel, the crowbar trembling in his grip, and felt the earth shift subtly beneath his feet, as if the house above was adjusting its weight. The tunnel twisted violently, forcing him to squeeze through narrow turns that scraped his shoulders raw. The deeper he went, the warmer the air became, not comforting warmth, but a heavy, suffocating heat like standing too close to a furnace. When the passage widened again, he stepped into a vast chamber. Pools of water dotted the uneven ground, and as he moved past them, his reflection appeared distorted, aged in some, and childlike in others. A distant, steady heartbeat, so deep it vibrated through the soles of his shoes, echoed in the chamber. At the chamber's center stood an impossible door, freestanding in the dirt like a misplaced relic. Its wood was dark and smooth, the carved symbols shifting almost imperceptibly when he wasn't looking directly at them. The whispers began again, but this time they were coherent, a chorus of voices overlapping. "Finish it. Open it. End what you started." Michael felt a strange certainty that this was the heart of everything. The knocks, the photographs, the figure wearing his face. This door was the choice the text messages had warned him about. He approached slowly, every step feeling heavier than the last. His hand hovered over the door's handle, which was warm to the touch, pulsing faintly like living flesh. He hesitated, his mind racing with memories. The photo of himself as a child at this very house, the warnings that had tried to steer him away, the storm that seemed to conspire against his escape. Behind him, a low rumble grew louder, the sound of shifting earth and cracking stone. The chamber was collapsing. He wouldn't have time to find another way out. With a trembling breath, he turned the handle and pushed. Blinding light flooded the chamber, and for a heartbeat, Michael saw everything at once. The Victorian house whole and new, the blurred faces from the photographs now clear and smiling, the hunched figure dissolving into smoke. The whispers faded into the sound of rain falling gently on leaves. When his vision cleared, he was standing on the front porch again, the storm reduced to a drizzle, the night eerily calm. His car was parked at the base of the drive, just as he had left it. But when he checked his phone, every text message had vanished, every photograph on the trunk now gone from memory. As he walked to his car, he glanced back, just once, to see the house's upstairs window glowing faintly. A silhouette, his own, watched him leave.